This is the full story of the Ouija board that eats souls. If you only want to hear the conclusion of this story, go to the 1 hour, 6 minutes and 55 seconds mark. Dos.
I like knowing that this story will be heard by the Relatos de la Noche community. This is the only place I could trust. But I must warn you, when I try to tell it, something stops me. My head hurts. I feel bad. And the people I've shared it with, especially those who could somehow help me, have gone through the same thing. This story is about a Ouija board. I learned a lot about them, unfortunately, to defend myself, to protect what I care about. And I also learned that the damn board I came across held something terrible inside it. And it wouldn't dare. It took a lot. But I guess for you to understand my story, I have to go back to where it all began. Back to October 2020 in Valle de Barabo. My grandparents lived there. They had a comfortable life, and when my grandfather retired and left his business in the hands of my dad and my uncle Armando, he sold the house he had in Mexico City, where we all grew up. He sold an apartment he had in Polanco, and with his savings he bought a house in Valle. It's a beautiful town surrounded by mountains, a little over 2 hours from Mexico City. The house he bought belonged to a friend of his, and they had spent countless weekends and some vacations there. Me too. My grandparents always dreamed of having a house like that, so when they found out it was for sale, that very one, they decided that would be where they would spend their final years. But they never thought there would be so few, that the dream would be so short. They bought it at the beginning of 2019, so by the time the pandemic arrived, it was the perfect place to ride it out far away from everything, safe, since both of them always had health and blood pressure problems. The rest of us in the family were very afraid that they could get infected, but at the same time we felt some relief that they were so isolated. Only my uncle Armando and his wife Katie saw them every 2 weeks, bringing groceries, medicine, and other necessities. We made sure they didn't go out, but in October, they called all of us. They were feeling really bad emotionally, since they didn't see anyone anymore. They felt weak, they missed us, and even though they knew we didn't want to visit them so we wouldn't expose them, they suggested we spend a few weeks there. They knew we were very careful, that all of us, except my dad, were basically staying at home all the time. It was very unlikely that we were sick, but they would also give us the chance to stay on one side of the house. Until 2 days passed and we felt confident enough to go see them and hug them. We would basically go and quarantine ourselves there in a part of the house before being with them. And that's how. And only then, we agreed. This is something we'll learn. Many with grandparents during the pandemic can relate. Infecting them was one of the terrible fears that we all had to live with. So we got ready, took everything with us, and went over there. The house was so big that we could live comfortably without running into my grandparents, who who would lock themselves in their room for those 2 days, separated from the rest by a long hallway. It would be my grandparents, my mom, my dad and me, and on the other side of the family, my uncle Armando, his wife Kathy, and my cousin Mariela. Mariela was my age, but she had grown very distant from everyone since the death of her mom, my Aunt Mari. And honestly, we were all a little upset with my uncle because before a year had even passed, he was already getting married again. Also, something was very odd about his wife, Kathy. In many ways, it seemed like she was pretending to be my Aunt Mari, may she rest in peace, as if she really wanted to take her place. And it wasn't a matter of being nice, of wanting to feel close to us. For example, once my mom and I were really uncomfortable because she made an inside joke that we used to have with my Aunt Mari, and I don't know how she found out about it. Being around her would be the least of our worries if we could stay with my grandparents. And I really wanted to spend time with my cousin, see how she was doing, because she had deleted all her social media and I didn't know anything about her anymore. I remember very well, and I don't know if this has anything to do with it, a dream I had the night before we left for my grandparents' house. I was there at her house, but it looked different. It was old, neglected. Inside, everything stank. It looked like it had been abandoned for years. I looked for my grandparents everywhere, but they weren't there. And then a very ugly lady would appear in a hallway and point me toward the window. I'd ask her where my grandparents were, who she was, and what she was doing there. And without saying a word, she would point outside again. I would finally look outside, and there were many dead people around the house. You could see their horrible old clothes, as if they had just come out of the graves. In the distance, I saw my grandparents walking away, but I didn't dare go outside because all the dead seemed to be looking toward the house. Gradually, they began to move forward. I guess this is where the inexplicable part of my story begins. And I apologize for taking so long, but believe me, everything I've told you was necessary to understand what's coming next. We arrived at Valle de Bravo. As soon as we got closer, the weather changed. You could start to feel the cold from that area. We went to town to buy everything we needed for several days at home. Very carefully with a double curve of the mouth, just like my dad always did. Then we left the town and headed to my grandparents' house, in an even more isolated area, far from everything. Just like my grandpa always dreamed, with no neighbors. He never liked people. I remember there was a little bit of rain as we were getting closer, and I liked it. And at that time of year, we were still going to get those nighttime rains. Watching the rain across the landscape from that house was beautiful. It was so well kept, so beautiful. But when we arrived, I was surprised to see the surroundings a bit neglected. The grass was overgrown. My dad said they asked the workers to stop coming, to avoid risking themselves or the workers. But that, he would use those days to do some maintenance wherever it was needed. It seemed strange to me because at that moment, it looked kind of neglected, and that made it look more like a haunted house than a vacation house. But anyway, we would work on that. I saw my uncle's truck parked there. They had already arrived. We got out and saw my uncle Armando and Katie eating. We greeted them. Then we went to greet my grandparents, who were at the door of their room. We were several meters away from them, the entire length of the hallway. Although I know we all wanted to hug each other, we felt it was safer to wait a bit, take a shower, and change our clothes. I don't know. I think a lot of people will understand how paranoid we were during those pandemic days, especially with our elders. Then we knit back to my uncle. He had that kind laugh that always made me uncomfortable, as if it wasn't sincere. I asked her about my cousin Mariela, and she told me the girls are out exploring the woods. The girls? I asked. My uncle told me that Mayra, Katie's niece, was staying with them. They also took her to spend those weeks with the grandparents, that it would do me good. That being with her had meant a lot to Mariela, and now they were inseparable. And well, I thought I wanted to see Mariela, but if she was doing better, that would make me happy too. I put on my jacket for the drizzle and went out on the path they told me they had taken. The one Mariela liked since we started going, when my grandparents still rented the house from time to time. But the drizzle was beginning to fall. When I saw no sign of them in the distance, I decided to turn back after walking for a while. And when I turned around, it was very strange, but I saw some flattened grass there, as if someone had just passed through there, leaving the trail. I paid attention, and I heard voices not far from where I was. One of them was my cousin's, I was sure. So, I walked off the path, following the trail of flattened grass. When I went a little further, I noticed there was some kind of slope. You couldn't see anything towards the path anymore, let alone toward the house. It seemed like they were trying to hide to have made it all the way there. As I got closer, I could hear Mariela's voice more clearly, and another voice as if playing. Then Mariela said, "No, please." And that made me hurry. Shout at her that I had already arrived, greeting her, but at the same time trying to stop whatever was happening. The voices went silent when I heard myself. But I kept moving forward a couple more meters, and when I moved some branches, I could finally see them. Mariela was lying on the floor, and a girl, our age Mayra, was on top of her. She was hiding something in her hands behind her back. She smiled at me. She told me they were waiting for me, that my cousin had told her a lot about me. My cousin smiled at me too, and then I understood that they were playing, or at least that's what it seemed like. I hugged her tightly. I wanted to see her, but something felt strange. She felt like she had before her mom died. Calm, smiling. I told them everyone was already waiting to eat, and they should hurry. My plan was to stay with them for a while, but I don't know. There was something I didn't like about Mary, so I decided to go ahead instead. I really wanted to get out of that forest, to go back to the house. I kept thinking about Mayra. Slim, very fair-skinned, with very pronounced dark circles under her eyes, almost like stains. Black hair, very beautiful and straight. Big nose. She looked almost like a Middle Eastern girl or something like that. She was very pretty, but in a strange way. At least to me. She scared me a little. When they arrived at the house, they greeted my parents very naturally, and we started eating. My grandparents ate in a small dining room they had near their bedroom. It was a very strange feeling to be together, but not really together. But we wanted to take care of them. It was the least we could do. During lunch, they told me where I would sleep. I wasn't going to do it with Mariela. They would let us sleep with Mayra. So I would have a room just for myself. I liked that, but at the same time, it made me sad. But I would have to sleep in the attic, in the place with the best view in the house. You could see the forest and the lake in the distance from there. And I did like that. After eating, Mayra came up to me. She looked at me without saying anything. It was a very long pause. Too long. It made me uncomfortable. until I asked him what was going on. Mira told me that when everyone fell asleep, when everyone went to their rooms, I should go to the room where they are. We have to show you something. The afternoon went by. I took a shower and went upstairs to sleep. And I started looking out the attic window. I really loved that place. It really reminded me of the houses in the movies. It had never scared me. But that was about to change. I heard someone knock on the door. It was Mayra and Maria. They asked me if I was ready, and I didn't understand. Mariela asked if Mayra hadn't told me our plans, and I told her no, that she only told me they were going to show me something. No, this will change your life, said Mariela. She grabbed my hand and quickly pulled me from the room before I could respond, but Mayra stopped her. Here. Let's do it here. It's farther from your dad. When I told him that, he walked away down the dark stairs. I went back to my room with Mariela, trying to talk to her, but she didn't answer me at all. It was as if she shut down, as if all her happiness vanished when Mayra wasn't there. She came back with a painting wrapped in black cloth. She came into my room and asked me to lock the door. She told me I couldn't tell anyone what she was about to show me. I said okay. She made me swear it, and I said yes again. But I think Mayra noticed that I said it too lightly. Swear it on the life of someone you care about. I didn't know what to say because I wasn't going to tell anyone. I didn't care what they had, but even though I didn't believe in those things, I still didn't want to swear to it. I asked him who I had to swear by, and he told me to just say, I swear on the life of someone I care about. I said yes when I said it. Then he took my hand and placed it with his. He found what he had tucked among those old cloths. It was a Ouija board. And even though I swear to you, it's not something that scared me. It had never been something that particularly scared me. I don't know if it was because of the moment or because we were alone in the attic in the middle of nowhere, but I felt really strange. I felt as if I had shown something that could really let me communicate with the dead. We locked the room. I must confess that the board was so strange. It looked so old, so unique. I was even intrigued. That told me the whole story. Both her mother and her Aunt Kathy, the wife of Mariela's father, they were very interested in the occult, to the point of buying several important objects. All of them were carefully kept in a room in the house. I knew that Kathy came from a wealthy family. Strange, but wealthy. Because when she got involved in my Uncle Armando's life, the first thing we all thought was that she was just another woman looking for money. But no, Kathy didn't need it. She had more money than my grandparents. They had so much money that she and her sister could afford to spend on things like that. The Ouija board of a sorcerer from a village in the mountains of Veracruz. I clarified that it wasn't Catemaco. That was a town meant to attract tourists. No. The real witches, he said, were found in far more remote villages, hard to reach, which were almost impossible to reach. He told us that the soul of a witch lived in that board, of a woman who had done a lot of good, but who had been burned alive at the beginning of the last century by a group of revolutionaries during the guerrilla wars in the mountains. She was summoned for the first time in 1936, at a time when Ouija boards were still unknown in Mexico, before they were marketed around here. Because we have to remember that the Ouija board was originally considered a tool to contact spirits, even those who were never alive. Later, it was marketed as a board game, and then it split between those who still thought it was just a game and those who used it as the main element of rituals, even satanic ones. Mayra knew all its history. She even mentioned that phrase about the devil's best trick. It had been convincing humanity that he didn't exist. She also said the best thing that could happen to those entities was finding a way to contact our plane. It was done by people who weren't truly convinced of what they were doing. People who didn't know how to open or close a session. We started playing and I was slowly drawn in by Mayra's charisma. She dominated the conversation. I believed everything she said. We asked if the pandemic would end in November, and the board quickly answered no. Then, when we insisted, when we asked anyway if the end was near, and the board kept going to. No, we asked something else. We asked why. I swear on a life that matters to me. The board wrote the word variant. Something that, at that moment, we didn't understand. But for some reason, it stuck in my memory. And of course, we were about to understand. A few weeks later. The questions continued. They became more important. We asked at the end, when we were tired, if we would have long and happy lives, if we would achieve our dreams. The board answered, no. And before we could ask another question, it continued with the next phrase, with my help. Yes. Ellen, I think that up until that moment, I felt like we were talking to someone rather than something, rather than a board. And honestly, I swear on my life, the planchette was moving on its own, very clearly, without any effort from the three of us who had a finger on it, and we weren't even pressing down on it. That's why I dared to ask, who are you? Who are we talking to? The board answered that we already knew. I told it that I didn't know anything to tell us. And then it replied, Mayra told you. That is, we understood that Mayra was right, that what she had told us was true. I asked if she was the witch who lived in the board, and before I could finish the question, really, the planchette moved violently toward yes. I got scared. I saw Mayra looking even paler than she already was. While the two of us took a step back, my cousin Mariela knelt in front of the board, put both her hands on the cursor, and asked, "Can you help me talk to my mom?" The board didn't say anything. I was trying to move the planchette. I saw that she was trying to drag it towards the yes, as if giving it a push would mark the answer she was looking for. I saw her sad. I hugged her. Mayra also came closer. We were about to finish the game when something made me turn the board over. The cursor had stopped in the middle, and I saw how it was moving by itself without anyone touching it, and I told them to look. The cursor as a unit went to yes without anyone even touching it. Mayra said this was too much, that this shouldn't be happening, that she would call her mom in the morning to ask her. Even though we were doing everything according to the ritual, even though I knew how to open and close it, the fact that it moved by itself without any contact from us was too much. It wasn't supposed to be like that. This wasn't supposed to be happening. Mariela approached the board again and told Mayra no. She told her, very upset, that she was going to keep playing. She stared at her and said, "You owe me." "You know why, Mayra? You owe me this." I got up to leave, but Mayra said I couldn't go, that whatever was happening would happen around 3 o'clock. If not, there wouldn't be any more answers. And even though every fiber of my body told me it was wrong, that I shouldn't be there, I couldn't do that to Mariela. If I put myself in her place, no, I couldn't stand not being helped. So for her, for my cousin, I stayed. When we went back to the game, suddenly, something made me ask them to be quiet. Someone was coming up the stairs. I went up slowly until I reached the attic door. We stayed quiet. There was someone there, behind. We were sure. "Are you awake?" My dad's voice scared me. Why the hell had he come up? Without opening the door, I told him yes, that we were still busy. He asked what we were doing. He said we should already be asleep. I told him we were talking about personal things, about girl stuff. And he said not to take much longer, please, that the grandparents might come out and walk around the house at night, go get water or something like that. That if we wanted them to stay isolated, we couldn't be walking around there too. Sarah said we would be done soon, that we'd be going to sleep soon. My dad didn't answer. He just went down the stairs. I know that when he doesn't answer, it's because he's angry, but at that moment, getting scolded in the morning was the last thing on my mind. They asked the Ouija board about my aunt, about Mariela's mother. It answered quietly, in strange sentences. Things we didn't understand, disconnected words. Then I asked it, "Can you make my aunt come?" The Ouija board gave the following answer. "Let us in, let us in, let us in, let us." He said it 3 times. Mayra asked how. The answer was vela, forehead, mirror, all night. Then he wrote it 3 more times. Mayra told Mariela that it was already too much, that they couldn't do that she didn't know if what would come to the mirror would be her mother, and Mariela, although she was sad, accepted. And the thing is, even I, the most skeptical one in the family, was scared by that. We started to close the session. Mayra started the ritual she told us she knew well. When the footsteps were heard again going up the stairs. My dad was likely returning when he saw they weren't coming down. Seeing we were still awake, signaled to them to keep quiet. To see if my dad thought we were asleep and wouldn't say anything else to us. He came up to the door. We almost held our breath, so he wouldn't say anything. He stopped right there behind the door. He tried to open it very slowly. We're coming, Dad. We're gonna sleep now. He was trying to open it again. I told her again we were on our way and she shouldn't come in. She was going to kill me if she saw us playing with the Ouija board, but I kept trying to open it. Mariela said they were already coming down, but I stayed at the door. She wouldn't leave until I got up and told her that was enough. Trying to come in like that violated my privacy, but when I opened the door, there was no one there. No one, not even on the stairs. But someone was trying to open the door. I saw the handle moving. I felt the pressure when I touched it to open it. Someone was on the other side. But they disappeared. I almost fainted. I think that was because my legs gave out. Mayra took the stairs and ran down without saying anything, and Mariela followed her. And I was looking toward that room in the attic. The one I had always liked. And now that darkness that had always calmed me terrified me. I felt like there was someone there hiding. I grabbed my phone and went downstairs without looking back. Feeling like someone was watching me from the darkness, I hurried down the stairs. I made it to my parents' room. I got in and snuggled between them. What I wanted most was to feel protected, and I got in the middle like when I was little. My mom woke me up. She asked me about my cousin. I told her I hadn't seen her after she ran downstairs last night. They should ask Mayra about her. She told me that Mayra was indeed there, but that Mariela hadn't woken up in her bed, that they couldn't find her anywhere. While she was telling me that, I remembered what I had been dreaming. I wrote it in the notes on my phone so I wouldn't forget. But I dreamed that I was there in my grandparents' house, in the attic. I looked out the window and saw dead people, just like in my earlier dream. Dead people standing around the house, and that the same ugly woman was telling them how to get in. She pointed out an open window to them, and they all came closer and went in through that window, and I could hear them down there moving all the grandparents' things around. And there, awake, now I could hear my uncles moving around the house, looking for Mariela everywhere. They knocked on my door. It was Mayra. She told me that something very bad had happened. I asked her why she said that, and she replied they would kill her. That the board was much more important than I thought. That she hadn't told us the whole truth. That the ritual she and Mariela had performed in the woods before I found them had actually activated it. There's just a lady living in the board, but she's not good like I told you. And I swear to you, I saw her here in my dreams before coming. As if she had been waiting for us. I still didn't really understand why she was worried. Mariela had probably gone out for a walk like she had done before. I didn't think it had anything to do with what we had been playing. By morning, with the sunlight coming through the window, I wasn't so afraid of the Ouija board anymore. Then Mayra asked me to please go with her. Reluctantly, I agreed and followed her in my pajamas. That's when she said the board was gone, that my cousin had taken it, and something worse had happened. We reached her room and she directed me to the bathroom. I opened the door. In front of the mirror, there was a completely burned out candle, as if someone had left it there, burning all night. Mariela doesn't know what's coming, but she already brought her. She helped her get out. She doesn't know who that woman is or what she wants from you. And Mom is going to kill me. I changed so I could go out and look for Mariela. I was already very worried about her. I walked down the hallway to my grandparents' room. My mom was listening to something my grandma was telling her. A dream from afar. She told her she saw a horrible woman, and she described her just like the one I saw in my dreams. Grandma said that the woman had been sitting all night in her rocking chair, the one she has next to her bed. That she was dreaming about something, and then it was like she opened her eyes and saw her. She went into another dream, then I came back to the room, and again I could see her, as if she were real. That she kept seeing her all night, and that she looked like a real flesh and blood person. That she seemed real, very real. I feared the worst. What if it was? What if whatever was on the Ouija board had come out? That they had helped it come out. And for some reason, it focused on her, my grandmother. And I had a reason to be afraid. My cousins and I played with the Ouija board all night. We were at my grandparents' house in Valle de Bravo. During the pandemic, my parents and I went there. Also my uncle Armando, his wife Katie. And my cousin Mariela, still suffering from her mother's death. Still suffering because my uncle married Katie so soon. When I got there, I realized they brought someone else. A strange girl our age, Katie's niece. She brought a strange Ouija board with her, very, very old, different from those commercial ones they sell everywhere. He told us he had stolen it, that his aunt and his mother had it, collectors of occult items. It had belonged to a sorcerer from Veracruz's mountains, and that in it, in the board, lived a witch. We played with it, and the Ouija told us many things, even about what would come next in the pandemic we were living through. But everything went to hell when Mariela asked if she could talk to her mom, when the Ouija told her that she had to open the way first. She had to leave a candle burning all night, until it burned out in front of the mirror. At that moment, we got scared and decided to leave the Ouija board alone. We woke up to some news. My cousin was no longer in the house. She had gone into the forest. And there was a candle in her room, burned down, right in front of the mirror. And the strangest thing of all was that several people in the family, including me, including my grandma, we had been dreaming about a horrible woman who almost seemed like a walking corpse wandering around that house. And in the case of my grandmother, watching her from inside her room, sitting in her rocking chair, watching her sleep. My parents and my uncles were worried about Mariela. I suspect they really thought she just got up early and went for a walk. That wasn't such a strange thing. It was normal. We loved my grandparents' house partly because of the surrounding forest. How safe it felt to lose ourselves in it for hours. Also, something more important mattered then. My grandmother. Soon after, I told my mom she'd dreamed all night about the strange woman watching her in her room. She started to feel sick. She felt like throwing up. She was hot. She was sweating buckets. At that moment, as you can imagine, what scared us the most was that it might be COVID, especially because it would mean that we were the ones who brought it to her. And yes, now we know those weren't the symptoms and that it takes days to incubate, to show up after contact with someone who has the virus. But at that moment, we were sure that we had put her in danger. So my parents and my uncle Armando prepared a truck as best as they could with plastic bags to take her to a doctor they knew, 40 minutes from there. As they got ready, something else happened. We saw Kathy approaching the house along a path. She was coming with my cousin Mariela, in pajamas, barefoot. We all ran toward her to ask her how she was, to ask her what happened to her, why she'd made us worry like that. They said she had found her 20 minutes from the house, several kilometers from there, lying down, asleep, in an area full of rocks, and she didn't know how she'd gotten there. And Mariela didn't seem to know either. She said she felt fine, but she didn't have any pain or anything strange. Her feet were full of wounds, but the strangest thing of all was that when Kathy found her, she didn't have them. Her feet were perfectly healthy. It was on the walk back that she hurt them. Then how the hell did she get there? Asleep. How did she get into such a dangerous area without getting the slightest bit hurt? Without hurting her feet? But anyway, that was something they would deal with later. They really left Mariela in my care while they took my grandmother to the doctor. They also said Kathy would stay with us to care for my grandfather. That we should pay close attention in case he showed any symptoms. Anything unusual. We should call them immediately if anything happened. I went with Mariela to wash the wounds on her feet. And that was an extremely strange moment for us as a group. Because even though she seemed to be speaking normally, I don't know, there was a sadness in her eyes, that reminded me of those first days when her mom died. My Aunt May. I asked her if she remembered what we had played, what the Ouija board had told us, and she said yes, that she remembered everything. She remembered going to her room and trying to sleep. Mayra told her not to do anything without asking her first. And then, as if she couldn't control herself anymore, as if she were dreaming, she vaguely remembers going out to look for a candle, the matches, going back to the mirror in her room and saying a few words. Words she didn't recognize, but among them she found a phrase. Whatever. But let my mom come. We were very tense, but something cut our conversation short. Voices. A voice that seemed to quietly scolding another. We quickly went out to see where it was coming from, and in the living room we found Kathy squeezing Mayra's wrist very tightly. She was crying like a little girl. She turned to look at... Then she looked at Kathy. Come here, you stupid brats. You don't know what you've just done. You don't know what you brought. Katie had discovered that Mayra stole her daughter. That she took her there. She played with her without permission. She said those items were in her room, locked up for a reason. Because they were all dangerous in one way or another. But the worst part, the most dangerous object in that macabre collection was precisely that board. That Ouija board. Then she asked us how much Mayra had told us about it. I replied that I knew the board belonged to a sorcerer from Veracruz, that he contacted a woman who lived in the Ouija board, a witch who had lived a long time ago and who worked to help the townspeople in nearby areas. Kathy started to laugh. She started to burst out laughing. She started to mutter that we were idiots. You have no idea, she told us, about the lie that Mayra told you. Very good. What lives in that board is actually trapped in it. What is there in that Ouija board is the closest thing to the devil that a human being can get. In Veracruz, that woman took more souls than cancer. I didn't understand. I was confused too. Mayra had a strange expression. It went from that of a scolded girl to a young woman almost mocking what she was hearing. Then Kathy pointed at her and asked, "I'm sure this stupid girl didn't share with you the little detail that when we got that Ouija board years ago, she was possessed by that witch. But she didn't tell you that. Did she? What? What?" I didn't know what to say. We didn't say anything, and Kathy went on. "For 3 days, this girl wasn't there. And something else was in her body. And it cost us blood, and it cost us a lot of money, and it cost us a life. The life of someone we dearly loved in order to free her. But you didn't mention any of that, did you?" Her apologized. She said she couldn't discuss what she didn't remember. That she couldn't have warned us if she herself was never told that story properly. Kathy said it was so she wouldn't have to bear the guilt of what her soul cost. But at that moment, there was something more urgent. We needed to resolve this quickly. The Ouija board was nowhere to be found. Kathy hadn't found it either with Mariella in the woods. Somewhere, around the house, or among the trails, it was there. And we had to find her as soon as possible. He said something I didn't believe then. He said she was laying souls to rest. But if we didn't find her in time, if we didn't do with that damned object what she was going to tell us to do, it was going to cost all of us our lives. I'm not only talking about this life. This one is the least important. I'm saying this will cost us our souls. That we're going to go to hell if you guys don't fix your mess. We searched all over the house. The grandparents weren't religious. There was no holy water, no crucifixes, no religious figures or images. Kathy found something in her suitcase to protect us, but she said she had to keep it, to protect the house from whatever was in the woods. And just like that, she told us to go, to look for her, that we didn't have much time, and she warned us about something, because a candle in front of a mirror is always dangerous. And I want to make this very clear as the Night Stories unit. A candle in front of the mirror is something you should never under any circumstances do, not even just to light it and put it in front, but leaving it there all night after something specifically asked you to do it. It was worse than we thought. We were done. Kathy told us not to pay attention to what we heard in the woods, to what we saw there. And that, if something ever looked like a ghost, we should run away as fast as we could. Because it would be something completely real. "If you're lucky," he said. "What got out, what's wandering around here is just any spirit. But if it's her who came, there's not much left to do." I put on my jacket. It was cold. There was some fog. It seemed like it could start raining again at any moment. Mayra was acting strange, almost excited about what we were about to look for. As if it were a game, an adventure. And Mariella, my poor cousin, still had that sad look on her face. The same one she had when her mom died. Kathy told us one last thing. That when we heard the buzzing of flies, there was something evil nearby. I walked down the hallway to Grandpa's room and called out to him. He didn't answer. I took a few more steps to tell him that we were going to walk in the woods. We were going to search for what we lost. Again, he didn't respond, even though his door was open. I decided to leave it like that in case he was asleep. I told him that I loved him very much. I went to the house entrance where Mayra and Mariela waited for me. Outside, the fog was low. You couldn't see much of that path we were about to enter. We had a few hours to get back, before my parents and my uncle Armando came back, and hopefully my grandmother too. We hoped it was just an age-related scare, and not something serious. We walked along the path, the one we've walked since we were kids, since it was just a house we used to visit and my grandparents hadn't bought it yet. Mariela and I used to get lost for hours. When we passed the place where I found them doing something strange when I arrived, I asked if we weren't going to look there. They looked at each other and told me no, that there was nothing to look for. So we continued. I think it was about a kilometer later, moving away not just from our home, but from any trace of civilization. When the trail forked, that's when our first and biggest dilemma came up. Would we split up or stay together? And the thing is, while one of those paths led to the rocky area where they had found Mariela, to where she sleepwalked, we didn't know how far she had wandered while asleep. Katie would have seen if the Ouija board was near her and she hadn't found anything. Ida said she would search all the way to the rocks. She told us to keep going on the other path, through that less explored part of the trail, with the vegetation getting in the way. It would be easier for her to keep going and find the area they mentioned without getting lost. Where Mariela was in the morning, where she had spent the night. So we kept going down that path, and honestly, I didn't remember ever taking it before. It's hard to describe. It was beautiful. It was thick with vegetation, pines and trees covered in moss and vines. If I hadn't been scared to death, I would have said it looked like a fairy tale. We walked for quite a while. I think it was about another half hour when we reached another fork. The trail split in two at a pyramid-shaped rock. Mariela and I talked about the possibility that she had gone that far. It seemed impossible. But what if it wasn't? What if the Ouija board was just a few meters further? That's why we decided to continue. We said at least 10 more minutes ahead, without leaving the path. And that way, at least, we would know if we could rule out those paths. I could hear the wind blowing through the trees, and I remember few things as terrifying in my life as that. I felt completely alone. I walked and walked without really understanding what I was doing there. Being so far away, I began to sense how absurd the situation was. I was really looking for a Ouija board. Did I really believe it took souls? That at night, when we played, the footsteps we heard outside the room were something paranormal, and not one of our parents checking if we had already fallen asleep. I felt stupid. How was I supposed to believe in that? My grandparents, my parents, everyone had raised me not to believe in superstitions, silly beliefs that try to invent an explanation for phenomena we don't understand. I started to laugh. God. What I was experiencing would make a great story for my friends at school. They were going to laugh at me so much. Something. A sound pulled me out of my thoughts. For a moment, I had stopped being afraid. I had realized how absurd the situation was, but now I was sure I had heard something. A voice far away, but not far enough to keep me from being terrified. I heard it again. There it was. There was someone there. A voice like a woman's that sounded like she was hurt. I thought I wouldn't forgive myself if someone needed help, and I ignored them thinking it was a ghost. So I called out and asked, "Hello? Is anyone there?" The moaning suddenly stopped when it heard me. I got desperate. I was sure there was someone there, and it couldn't be my cousin. The paths had gotten really far apart. We were quite far away. If either of us shouted, we wouldn't hear each other. I tried to pay attention to my surroundings. It wasn't unfamiliar to me. Even though I was surrounded by trees, I felt like somehow I had already been there. I had already been following the sound of crying through the trees. Of course, it was like déjà vu. I kept searching. I asked him if he was okay. I asked her to talk more so I'd know where to find her. That I was going to find her. I didn't know who I was about to meet, but I kept searching. A few meters ahead, the path was ending. When I started searching among the trees, while moving the branches aside with my hands, I saw something a few meters away, among the trees. Everyone crouched down, as if eating mud with her hands. I saw a figure. I recognized a woman in an old dress with her ugly hands. It was simply that horrible woman I had seen in my dreams. I froze for a moment. I didn't know what to do, but then, with her back to me, she stood up and started walking like that, backwards, but very quickly toward me, running. I turned and returned to the path. I fell down like in a damn horror movie. I fell down, and when I tried to run, my legs felt clumsy, like I was in a nightmare that was completely real. I ran. I remembered the physical education classes from middle school. I was running, lifting my knees and moving my arms quickly. I'm really bad at anything physical. I'm terrible at running. But at that moment, I was sure my life depended on it. Maybe even more. I started shouting, calling out to Mariella and Mayra. I was shouting that he was coming after me, that he was following me. I screamed until I was out of breath and could only keep running. I couldn't see anything. My legs were starting to go numb. I felt like I couldn't run anymore, and I felt like something was running behind me, getting closer and closer. I could feel its hands trying to touch my back. Before we continue, everyone, I'm going to ask you to take a breath and stay until the end of this episode. Well, even though this story is long, when it ends will depend solely and exclusively on you. Make it to the end. Share on your social media how you're experiencing this story. For now, let's continue. I heard voices in the distance, and through the trees I could see two figures hurrying toward me. Mayra and Mari. At that moment, I don't know where I got the strength from, but I walked until I reached them and then I collapsed. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. It took me a second to remember that something was coming after me, and I jumped up startled, but both of them were hugging me, asking me what I had seen. I told them it was a woman. I described her to them. I said she was the woman of my dreams. The woman my grandmother had also dreamed of. Sarah said no, that it was likely just suggestion, that it couldn't be true, that she knew it couldn't be real, that it was all in our minds, that we couldn't get carried away. That was what she wanted, to convince us that she was there, among us. But it wasn't true, that it wasn't possible. A dreadful wail then filled everything around us. The whole forest. We heard the birds take flight, like they fly in fear after a gunshot. All three of us heard it. The birds heard it. Something was coming down the path I arrived on. I couldn't run anymore. I could barely walk, but the two of them helped me. I said we couldn't stop. That even if we had to crawl, we had to keep going. And we did it. I honestly don't know where I found the strength. I thanked them so they would let me go. And we started walking, almost running. Meira kept saying that was enough. That she couldn't get any closer unless we stopped. As long as we didn't look back. When we got close to the house, Katie was waiting for us near the door. She was smoking. I had never seen her smoke. As we approached, she shook her head. And when we got there, she told us she couldn't believe we hadn't found anything. We told her there was a woman in the woods, that she was following us. And she said yes, that she could see her. Then she asked us to turn around. She pointed us toward a big tree near the path. That's where she went. Behind. Look! Can you see it? It's peeking out. No. Maybe. I couldn't see anything, but I was the first one to enter the house. I stayed at the door because they were still outside talking about who knows what. Then they looked at me and approached. They came in. They closed the door behind. No! I asked Kathy what that was. Who was she? She told me she didn't know. That she couldn't really tell me. That maybe she was just a poor crazy woman who lived nearby, or someone lost in the woods. She left me talking to myself. She went to check on my grandfather. He kept asking about my grandmother. They still didn't communicate. I told Mariella that Kathy was crazy, but Meira said she knew why I was saying that. They say that when that thing happened to me, I didn't seem like myself. I didn't talk like myself. That I looked different. Maybe that's what he means, right? He said. It got dark. It started to drizzle. We kept looking out the window. We could see through the trees. I think I could see her there. You could see the woman in the light-colored dress walking among the trees. She would appear and disappear behind them. At some point, Meira took out a flashlight to try to shine it on her, but we stopped her and we managed to take it away from her. My phone rang. It was my mom.
Daughter. You have to say something to your cousin. Please get her ready. Your grandmother is not well. She is very ill. And we don't know why. She came saying things all the way. She was hallucinating. And she's still like that. And her vitals are already bad. You have to be prepared, okay?
I asked my mom what she was talking about. How was it possible? In the morning, my grandma was fine.
I don't know, Mija. I don't know. Dad is already on his way over there to you. He should be arriving soon. He's going to talk to your grandpa and bring him here. But please, you go get your cousin ready. But please, don't let anyone else find out. Don't let anyone else find out, okay?
I hung up and looked for my cousin. I told her to come with me to the attic, to my room for some reason. To what used to be my room for some reason. When we went upstairs, I said my grandmother was sick, but she didn't seem affected. She just asked if she had died. I told her no. but we had to be prepared for whatever came. Indiana, the sadness I had seen in her before going into the woods was gone. And I didn't understand anything anymore. She's out there, my cousin told me, peeking out the attic window. I looked too. He was right. The woman was there among the trees, but in a clearing where she could be seen clearly. It looked like she was staring right at us, and I swear her feet weren't touching the ground. No longer had any doubt that what we were seeing couldn't be explained at all. Despite the fog, despite the darkness, we could see her very clearly. We ran downstairs to tell Kathy so she could see it, to tell her where it was, but when we went to the window, it was no longer there. Nothing could be seen out there. The only thing we saw was something worse. Along the narrow dirt road that led to the house, the lights of a car from my dad's car stopped. Something had happened. I was far away, but I had to go to him. I had to see him. I had to run through the Tenía que correr por la oscuridad, through the forest, but I had to get there. I had to llegar a él. The last part of this episode, Community by Chance, is not being recorded in Mexico City, but in the same house where it all began. Stories at night, a long time ago, with a microphone we haven't used in a long time. Precisely the one used to record sagas like The Crucifix of Father Lucas. That's why it might sound a little different from the last episodes, but also, for some reason, this third part feels special to us. This is the conclusion of the story of the Ouija that devours our souls. Few people, very few people will believe what I saw that day from the attic. A woman floating among the trees, just like the one I had seen in my dreams. A little further down the road that led to my grandparents' house, a car was stopped with its lights on. My dad, arriving to get my grandfather to take him to the hospital, to let him know that Grandma was unwell. I ran down to reach him, to let him know what was going on, what had happened, so he could take me with them. I ran to the car, but nobody was there. The door was open. Then I saw my dad a few meters away, rubbing his eyes as if they were burning a lot. As I got closer, I also felt something strange. That painful sensation, like when you're chopping onions. I asked him if everything was okay. My dad had half of his face frozen. He couldn't move it. He looked really bad, like his face had melted. He looked strange, but there was an expression of terror that went beyond the paralysis. What happened? I asked him what. I asked again, but he didn't respond. For a moment, I looked up. For a moment, I thought I saw the woman walking among the trees, moving away. What did I ask? What did my dad helping her up ask? If she saw something, if anything crossed her path, she told me yes. But as if it were an unimportant detail. It was clear there was something more. She asked me if my mom had talked to me. I told her yes. She asked what she'd told me, and I said only that Grandma wasn't well. He shook his head, as if my mom had hidden important information. Then he said, "Your grandpa." grandpa. We have to go get him quickly. Your grandma saw something. She needs it. She can't die without seeing it. I shouted at him to please stop for a second. That he should explain to me what the hell was going on. That I didn't understand anything. That I needed to know. That please tell me what was going on. And I think he saw me so upset, so scared, so confused that he stopped. He took me by the shoulders and told me, "If you want to know, I'll tell you. Your grandmother died. She was dead for more than a minute. The doctor declared her clinically dead, and we cried for her and everything. But before we left the room, she came back. She came back with a horrible scream, with something I had never heard before in my little girl. She was crying. She was very scared. Not even your mom, your uncle, and the doctor together could calm her down. Nurses arrived. A lot of people came, and we still couldn't. And your grandma was crying and begging us not to let her die. Begging us not to let her die again, please. She squeezed my hand and begged me not to, with a look of terror in her eyes that I had never seen in her or anyone else. They injected her. They gave her something, I don't know what, and only then did she breathe. No. My dad stopped. He looked around as if he wasn't sure about telling me what came next. Sit down. I'm going to tell you here because I'm not going to do it near your grandfather. But your grandma said something. She said she had seen hell. That she had seen many things. That she knew where she was going. Should come get your grandfather. Quick. That he couldn't die like that. I don't understand, but I know what I saw. And I'm not going to let your grandmother die like this. I drove the car to the house. My dad's face looked really bad. One side of it was drooping terribly. We went all the way into Grandpa's room. Now no longer worried about COVID, about infecting him with anything, but there was no one in the room. Not in the hallway either. Not anywhere else either. We went back to the living room and there was Kathy, standing there not understanding anything. We asked her about Grandpa and she said she hadn't seen him. That if he wasn't in his room... I heard footsteps coming from the stairs. Mariela and Mayra came in laughing. I asked them if Grandpa was upstairs and they said no. Mayra pointed outside, toward the forest. Toward the path where Mariela had gotten lost. My dad went out quickly to look for him, but I don't know. It was as if he hadn't noticed how strange Mayra and my cousin were acting. I grabbed my jacket to go after him. Mariela came up to me and hugged me. She whispered something in my ear. "Everything is fine, cousin." Okay. I was able to talk to my mom already. "She's coming." I ignored that and ran out. It was very cold, you guys. There was a very thin fog. I could see my dad walking down the road. You could only see something blurry, but you could still see him in the distance, and I ran to catch up with him. I recognized the place we were approaching, and I stopped. I told him to follow me, and I got off the path. It was that place where my cousin and Mayra had found me the day I arrived. Where they were doing who knows what. We heard something. Someone was there. And I saw her among the branches of the trees, moving quickly, hiding. I saw her. "You keep looking for your grandfather?" My dad said as he stopped, and I kept going. I found him. I saw my grandfather digging by hand. I recognized the place very well. It was exactly the place where I found Mayra on top of Mariela, when I hid something in her hands behind her. "What is Grandpa doing?" I asked him. He didn't pay much attention to me. He kept repeating without looking at me. "They left it around here. It must be around here. They left it around here?" I went over to him and tried to lift him, but I couldn't move him at all. He was digging with a lot of strength. His arms felt tense, like I didn't have the slightest chance of stopping him. And he wasn't as strong as a unit. There was something strange about him, as if he wasn't in control of his body. No. My dad emerged from the branches and pulled my grandpa. He told him that we had to go, that Grandma was waiting for him. Together, we managed to lift him up, drag him, and Grandpa started to walk. But he kept turning around like he had left something behind, or like something was coming after us. As we neared the house, my dad received a message. He made a really ugly face, and he said there was no time, that he had to leave already. And without even stopping by the house for a jacket, he put Grandpa in the car just as he was in his pajamas. "Take me with you, Dad," he would say. But it seemed like he didn't hear me. "Take me with you, please." At that moment, Katie came running out, putting on a jacket. She said she had to be with Armando. And Dad looked at me and told me to trust him, that he didn't want me to be near that. He kissed my forehead and left. He left me at my grandparents' house. I was really scared to go in. I was really scared to turn around. My dad's car drove away down the road, and I didn't want to turn around. I had to gather my courage to do it. I felt like something was going to be there, watching me. I started hearing something coming from the house. There was a light on, the one in the attic. Who knows how long my phone had been dead? It wouldn't even be useful to light my way. The house lights were flickering. It lasted 3 or 4 seconds, then went out for 10 or more. Nothing about that was paranormal. That happened all the time over the years. After a while, it returned to normal. But at that moment, the only light that wasn't flickering was the one in the attic. As if they were lighting it with candles up there. I wasn't planning to go in, yeah. No. I briefly considered walking down the path. It was kilometers to walk in the cold, but eventually I'd reach the highway and other houses. I could make it. So I took a few steps. I could hear flies buzzing. A lot of flies, like there was something really filthy coming closer. It had a presence, I felt its meaning. I'm not sure what I saw there, but among the trees, behind branches and branches, I thought I saw something for a moment. If my mind wasn't deceiving me, I thought I saw something like the head of a chiva, of a goat. No. I don't know if it was on 2 legs, but it seemed to be very tall. So I turned around. I went back and went into the house. The only thing I could think to do was go to the kitchen and hide under my grandparents' bed. It had a long tablecloth that covered almost all of it. Planned to stay there as long as necessary. There was something outside, yes, in the forest. Something that scared me even more. Much more than whoever was in there scared me. Someone arrived. I heard footsteps on the porch. He came up to the door. Then I heard someone coming down from the attic. He opened the door and said something. "Come in. We were waiting for you," Mariella said. Something came in, and the smell that filled the community then is indescribable. It was the smell of death. They went up to the attic. I heard a distant phone ringing. I remembered that mine was dead, that whatever happened, they wouldn't be able to let me know, that they would call my cousin. "I'll let him know when I find him." There was no emotion in Mariella's voice. No feeling. After answering, she ran upstairs. I peeked under the table. I believed she would be safe there as long as the lights stayed off. I saw Mariella coming down with Myra. They left the house. I assumed they had walked toward the forest. I came out from under the table. I went up to the attic for my things, and there on my bed was the board. And they had put mirrors in the room. There was that damn Ouija board. I quickly searched everywhere for my power bank to charge my phone, and I finally found it. I rushed downstairs to hide in my grandfather's room, but saw something in the living room as I passed. It was a dark figure. Something black. She was sitting in the living room, and the only thing you could see were her eyes. And it wasn't the darkness. That wasn't what was hiding her. Whatever was there was a completely black figure that was looking at me. My cousin and her friend approached. I ran. I ran to my grandparents' room and locked the door behind me. Without glancing at the rocking chair, I crawled under the bed, like when I was a child, and hid there to feel safe. I needed to calm down. I needed to breathe for a moment. My phone finally finished charging. I was finally able to turn it on. I called my dad. I finally knew my grandmother passed away before my grandfather arrived. I stayed there until a while later my uncle Armando arrived, Katie, and my parents. My grandfather had to stay in the hospital, sedated in the hospital. As soon as she could, Katie went after Mariella, alone, and she asked her where the hell the board was. And I noticed it and I approached. I told her I'd seen it in the attic. And as soon as I said it, my head hurt. I felt a sharp pain in my right temple. I feel it as a single unit. When I write this story, the same one that has been felt by people I tell it to. She ran upstairs. She saw me angry. She came over to hug me and whispered something in my ear. "So your grandfather is going to leave too, then?" She told me, "Your grandfather," as if he wasn't hers. As if it wasn't her. And her voice was like, I know this is gonna sound crazy, but it was as if they had been heard. Two voices whispering to me. Katie came down with what I think was the board wrapped in a blanket. Without saying anything, she took Mira with. They left in the car and apparently headed back to Mexico City. Mariela remained seated without speaking, without saying much. And she only got up to eat. She only seemed to pretend to be normal when they called her to eat. My grandfather passed away a week later, because of COVID, isolated from all of us. No one saw him get sick. No one knew what happened. None of us had any symptoms or seemed to have gotten sick. It was very strange because no one expected that when we saw him, when they took him to Grandma, it would be the last time that we were going to see him. No, because they wouldn't let us see his body. A nurse who took care of him told my uncle Armando that my grandfather would scream at night, that he was hallucinating, that he said he saw a woman. My uncle says he thinks it was my grandmother. I imagine something much worse. Much worse. After my grandfather's death, I don't know if it was just a coincidence or what, but Mariela immediately went back to normal. To the sadness from before. To missing her mom. They didn't take Mera again. She wasn't at the wake. The house has been for rent since the pandemic ended. Today, anyone can visit it. But Mariela has never come back. Very strange things are told. They've even made it into the reviews people leave on the rental website. Smell like sewage. A rotten smell that suddenly comes at night from the forest. That the door is found open in the morning, and footsteps are heard in the attic when there is absolutely no one there. She did come back once. She only went back to the house with my uncle Armando once, but after that she never went back. She said there's still something in the woods. You can see it at night if you pay attention. You see it wandering around the house and trees. Uriel, you know, this is just a part of my story. You know how hard the rest is for me. Maybe it's not that scary, but it's much more painful. I hope I can tell you to finally publish it. At some point, and that people get to know the rest of the story. You know I was able to contact my grandmother. And it hurts me a lot to know where she is. And how scared I am of that Ouija board. It eats souls. I hope they take it seriously. Community. Before we wrap up this story, the story the protagonist has shared with us so far, I want to say something I've already discussed with her, something that's already very clear to her. Well, among the things that happen next, she becomes very close to Katie. They decided to lend me the board. They were sure that having it in my hands, even without playing it, which I wouldn't do, of course, I was going to feel that energy that I couldn't deny. Because what they tell me is that they know how incredible this story may seem. And even though they're sure that I was going to tell it with the same respect as I tell all of them, Gudebreda, they wanted to give me some evidence that there was some truth to it. And you know I'm fearful, but my skepticism gives me the courage to have objects like that. You know I have another Ouija board from another story that's around here, in Relatos de la Noche, and nothing ever happened to me with it. But I have to tell you that something did happen with this one, and it was definitely strange. The Ouija board finally came to me last December, right when I was moving to a new house. And I'm sure I packed it very well. I'm sure it was one of the first things I packed. And when I went back to my old apartment to pick up the last things I had in my studio, I found a thick black cloth bag. It was just like the one they gave me this Ouija board in. I had to go check at the apartment, the new apartment, the boxes, to see if I hadn't seen wrong, to see if I hadn't taken it wrapped in something else. And I couldn't find it anymore. It never made it to the new apartment. And this could be a coincidence. I have ADHD, so it could have been that I wasn't paying attention, that I did it something else, that I just thought I had put it away. But the point, and what can't be denied, is that the board was no longer in my studio. Only the bag. When I had to tell our anonymous protagonist and Katie, all the names in this story have been changed, by the way. They told me they understood that it was okay. Because they say the Ouija board calls. This Ouija board calls. I don't know if I lost it. I don't know if someone stole it from me during the move. But I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that it doesn't worry me to think that someone has it without knowing. What they took, maybe out of pure curiosity. He took a board. Well, for this family, it represents a lot. A lot of very ugly things and deaths. And it's strange for me to think that that board, who knows whose hands it's in now, just left lying around like it was nothing somewhere from Mexico City. For my part, I've obviously come to the decision not to accept objects anymore. No matter how skeptical I am, I do feel it's too much responsibility. And you know that I'm not an expert in handling any of this. I'm simply someone who's passionate about telling stories. And I have to admit, that place, and tell you that if at any point in this story you felt a strange headache, on 100, on the right side, please let us know. Because I would like to know. Maybe at some point we can tell the rest of this story. For now, we appreciate that you listened. This episode of Relatos de la Noche